Occasion in NFL history, at least preseason history, last night when the Commanders took down the Ravens, ending their preseason record streak at 24. I don't know what it means. I never did know what it means. The Ravens took a lot of pride in it, so presumably they wanted to continue it as long as they could. Not to the point where they played Lamar Jackson last night, but they still, within the confines of the guys who are on the field, it's a culture of winning, and they want to win, and we want to win, and we want to win, and they did for 24 in a row, and now they didn't. Commanders win. We're going to talk more about that game later, Chris, but your first reaction to the notion that the Commanders have taken down the greatest streak of meaningless football victories in NFL history.
Even in meaningless football history, I mean, you could tell the fan base knew about it, right? I mean, you knew there was, like Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were saying, the people that were left in the crowd, it was still a pretty good crowd. They were on their feet at the end of the football game. So, like, everyone was aware of this streak, right? I'm a little bit like, hey, I'm like the players and the fact that, hey, who cares? It's just the preseason. But you know, there's a part of me too that the competitor and all that. I was like, ooh, let's see if Washington can pull this out. And I think what also on top of it is, I think the teams that play Baltimore in the preseason kind of get sick of hearing it. You know, and I know the starters aren't out there, but I think guys like Ron Rivera and them, they were probably managing the end of preseason game 2 a little more tightly than normal last night, because even then they don't want to hear about John Harbaugh and the Ravens and undefeated preseason. So that added the intrigue to me, just knowing how coaches and players can be about a subject like that and rally around it. So it's over, but you know, meaningless. But I'm glad we can kind of shut up the subject now and don't have to hear about it so much.
That streak had shades of another meaningless streak that the Ravens at one point tried to extend to the ire of Vic Fangio, the former Broncos head coach. If you remember this, Chris, they had the record for consecutive games with 100 yards rushing, not for one player, just for the team. And they didn't take knees at the end of a game against the Broncos so that they could extend the streak by getting to 100 net rushing yards for the game. And John Harbaugh wasn't all that thrilled with the pushback that he got, and he regarded it as significant. It was a streak that they ultimately shared and beat the Steelers on. Again, you prioritize what you prioritize as a coach of a football team. But ultimately, all that matters is winning in the regular season. And if you see some correlation between instilling an idea that our competitive desires are so strong,
right,
that we compete about everything,
right,
we compete about anything, we're going to compete all the time. Whenever there's a competition, it means something to us, even if it doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It means to us learning to compete. Now, there are points where it becomes unhealthy and it becomes completely irrelevant and it becomes the fodder for jokes like we saw Jahan Dotson make. But I guess I'd rather have my organization wired to always compete.
Agreed.
Than to never compete.
Agreed. It's going to annoy other coaches and players, but I don't think it's going to annoy anybody on the Ravens football team or organization that they had that little goal. I mean, yeah. And, you know, to add to your point, right? I mean, they're a team that's relevant every year and has been in the Super Bowl window, playoff window. Damn, a lot more than they haven't over the last 10 or 12 years. That's for sure. So there's something to that culture. And we know it's the Ravens. The Ravens want to bully everybody. They don't give a damn if it's preseason, drinking Gatorade, or, you know, hanging out in the locker room. They're the bullies. So they want to set that mantra right to start the preseason and have it carry over. And I'm not mad at them for that. I'm not. The only time you get mad is, like you said, if it crosses over to, wait, you're doing something stupid now to keep a streak alive, or you're endangering some players. And I don't think that's really happened. So I can't ever be mad about John Harbaugh and what he does with that organization.
After extending that streak in October of 2021 against the Broncos in lieu of taking a knee, John Harbaugh, coach of the team, said after the game, it's a very, very tough record to accomplish, and it's a long-term record. I'm not going to say it's more important than winning the game. For sure, it's certainly not. But as a head coach, I think you do that for your players, and you do that for your coaches, and that's something they'll have for the rest of their lives. And Lamar Jackson had perfect observation in response to that. I'm happy we got the win. I didn't even care about the record. So, I don't know where that goes as it relates to things they can never take away from you. I have a feeling Ravens players who were on those teams aren't going to be gathering their grandchildren around and saying they were part of the team that set the all-time record for consecutive 100-yard rushing games by a team, just as they won't be gathering them around to hear about the time that dad or grandpa or pop-pop was the player on a team that set the all-time NFL record for winning games that didn't matter a damn bit. There's something comical about it. I get the idea that you want to go compete, but we all know people who put far more importance in things that don't mean jack shit.
Right.
We all know them in our lives. And this is just an example of people putting way too much significance in something that means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it does. It took a life of its own, I think, between the media and just, throughout football. But I think big picture stuff to what you started out the conversation with, I think it's not the end all be all, but it's a little part that can influence the big picture a little bit. Like you're talking about with that, just the never die attitude, right? We're just going to play tough and compete for 4 quarters. We don't give a damn where we play, parking lot, preseason, whatever. We're going to be there. Hey, we're big and physical. That's right. And yep, that's right. Look what we do. We run for 100 yards every game. Even though we're going to run, we still run it at you. And it doesn't mean a lot. It means more to the coaches and all of that. But I do think where it can become something is if you start to win, right? If you start to win a Super Bowl and start to be that, then people start to look at, well, hey, this team, look what they did. They, preseason, look, they've won a Super Bowl or two, and look, they dominate on the ground for the last 8 or 9 years. And that's where it can become something maybe when you do huddle around the fire as a player, you go, we won a Super Bowl and we were one of the best running teams you ever saw. We dominated everybody, right? And that's where it starts to become like lure of the organization and has some shine to it. But you got to win and become something before it gets to that point.
I didn't know Phil Simms ever played for the Ravens. I guess that time with the Browns.
I tried to change it a little.
Counts.
I tried to change it a little.
It didn't change very much.
Right.
By the way, speaking of John Harbaugh, I was very disappointed. So disappointed.
Why?
To see that Michigan has self-imposed
I bet you are
on his brother Jim.
Yes.
So you won't get to meet with Jim, talk to Jim, visit with Jim, your good friend Jim. That's not going to happen when you work the game between Michigan and McNeese State.
No, East Carolina University.
Oh, East Carolina.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
jerk. That's right. Me and Mike Tirico on the call on Peacock. Okay, but I am excited for it.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.